In stats today, we continued with the handout 1.2. So I realize I skipped one of the questions that I asked about miles per gallon for a car that you drive, and we moved on to this. So we'll deal with that in a little bit, but I want to get to stem plots, and we're going to make a stem plot of pairs of shoes. So here's the third period data. And everyone wrote it down on the board. I typed it a little nicer so we'd have a little more room. We're going to make a stem plot. So the first step is to make a vertical line to separate the stem and the leaves. So I would call this pairs of shoes. For statistics students. I'm out of room there. All right. So you start out the same way we do with dot plots, and you find your min and your max. And this tells you what you need to consider when you're making your stem. So typically, a good rule of thumb is you can find the largest place value represented, and that is your stem. So for example, 2 is a ones digit, but most of the others go 2 digits, which means the largest place value is tens. Largest place value is tens. So that becomes our stem. Now you need to represent the min to the max tens place value in the stem. So that means I need a 0 for that 2, all the way down to a 3 for that 32. And you can't skip numbers in between. They're all represented in our data set, but pretend for a moment no one had any pairs in the 20s, then I would still write a 2 because you can't skip numbers. You want to show gaps if they do exist. So we're going to go 0, 1, 2, 3. And from there, it gets pretty easy, although some people get weirded out when we get multiples in one stem. So for example, for that 2, I cross it out and I write a 2 next to the 0. For the 12, I cross it out and I write a 2 next to the 1. Still not looking that weird yet. For the 8, I write an 8 next to the 2 up top. For the 26, I write a 6 next to the 2. All right, this is where it starts to look weird. For the 22, I'm going to write a 2 next to that 6. So this one sole number right here, 2, resembles 22. This one sole number right here, the 6, resembles 26. And we just go from there. So keep marking out and making numbers. We're going to make a 7 and then a 7. We're going to make a 0 and then a 7. We're going to make a 6 and 2 5s. We're going to make a 0 and then a 2. A 9 and a 5. A 1 and a 9. A 7 and a 5. And a 7 and a 9. All right, hopefully that was really easy. Just can't make that 9 look right. Let's try one more time. There we go. All right, so this is a traditional or typical stem plot. Another choice you can make is you can split the stems. So what you do at that point is you want to represent the lower half of the tens and the upper half. So I'm going to need to write smaller to fit it all. And we'll have a 0L, a 0H, a 1L and a 1H, a 2L and a 2H, and a 3L. So the 0L represents 0 to 4 pairs of shoes. The 0H represents 5 to 9 pairs. The 1L represents 10 to 14 pairs of shoes, and so on. It's really nice when you have it graphed traditionally on the left, because then you can sort it really quickly instead of having to go through the data again and cross out. So I'm going to use that. So I'm going to sort this pretty quickly. That 2 goes here. The 8 goes here. The 7, 2 5s, and a 9. Another 5 and a 7 and a 9. And then for the 1L, we have a 2, a 7, 7, a 0, a 6, a 0, a 1, and a 7. For the 20s, we have a 6 and a 2, a 9 and a 5, and then we have a 2. I kind of got off in the middle of this plot. You want to try really hard to make your numbers all be the same size. That way a peak is evident. So like these are the same height right here. The 1L and the 1H, because there's 4 numbers there. We do have a second peak right here, because notice if I go top to bottom, it's getting less and less and less occurrences, and then all of a sudden in the 2H it rebounds. That's like that's a second peak, because that row, or that the 2H 25 to 29 shows a rebound in occurrence. So now we need to talk about it. Which one do you make? Do you split the stems or do you not? I would say it's a matter of preference, and whichever one shows you more of the cuss things. So whichever one, like if one of these plots makes the center more visible or shows you the shape a little better, then you want to go with that. For this one, I feel like splitting the stems shows you a little bit more of the story, because nothing is really happening in the 0 to 4, but in the 5 to 9, that's the true peak, and it narrows down that peak. Instead of on the left graph saying 0 to 9 is the peak, now we can be more specific and say 5 to 9 is the peak. Both have a positive skew. Splitting the stems shows a little bit of a rebound in the 25 to 29 with the second peak. Range is the same. So similar, but yet a little different. So when we describe this, I'm going to walk through cuss. I'm going to talk about the center. Anything unusual, and I don't really see anything unusual in this one. The spread and the shape. I think the only possible unusual thing is right here, but I'll talk about that in the shape, so no worries there. Unusual is where maybe you want to mention outliers. For the center, you typically state the median or the mean, and we haven't really had that lesson yet. So, you know, we have 22 numbers. There's 22 of these here, 22 students. So the median is the average of the 11th and the 12th. So we need to find the 11th and the 12th number. So if I'm counting on the splitting the stems one, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 values and the zeros. On the 1L, here's the 10th, here's the 11th, and here's the 12th. So the median is 10.5. I'll go over that later in class. But the median is the average of the 11th and the 12th observation. Once again, this is the 10th, this is the 11th, and this is the 12th. So it's the average of 10 and 11. Very weird. All right, use context. Third period stat students have a median of 10.5 pairs of shoes. I'm going to skip unusual because I don't see any outliers. Pairs range from 2 to 32. There's our spread. And then lastly, shape. Pairs show positive skew with a peak at 5 to 9 and a smaller sorry, I'm running out of room. Second peak at 25 to 29. All right, hopefully that makes sense. I will see y'all later.